Authority versus autonomy. It's all about the courage to think for yourself. You have to wonder, at what point does a rule stop being a guideline and start feeling like a cage? This is one of those deep, fundamental tensions, a battle as old as we are, really. It's the safety of authority on one side and the freedom of our own minds on the other.
So, when is it right to follow the rules? And maybe more importantly, when is it right to break them? I mean, this is a question that pops up everywhere, isn't it? From the classroom to the government, we all face this at our jobs, in our neighborhoods, even just in our own heads. So today, let's dive into the philosophical battleground where this very conflict has played out for hundreds of years.
Okay, so our story really gets going back in the 18th century. There was this huge philosophical movement that honestly changed everything. And the interesting part, this revolution didn't start with armies or protests in the streets. Nope, it all started with a simple but incredibly powerful idea.
And that idea came from the German philosopher Immanuel Kant. He had this rallying cry, sapere aude. It means dare to know. Or, as he put it, have courage to use your own reason. Just a few words, right? But wow, this phrase absolutely lit a fire across Europe. It became the motto for an entire era, what we now call the Age of Enlightenment.
See, Kant believed humanity was stuck in what he called a self-incurred immaturity. It's a great phrase. He said the problem wasn't that people weren't smart enough to think for themselves. Not at all. The problem was a lack of courage. The courage to use your own understanding without just, leaning on someone else, a king, a priest, some expert to tell you what to believe.
And this gets right to the heart of what Kant was saying. For him, the Enlightenment wasn't just about being smart or clever, it was about being free. Daring to think for yourself, that was the ultimate act of liberation. It was about breaking these invisible chains of just blindly obeying tradition and authority.
All right, so if thinking for yourself is the goal, what happens when you take that idea to its absolute logical extreme? Well, some philosophers did exactly that. They started exploring ideas that didn't just question authority, but wanted to get rid of it completely.
And that brings us to anarchism. You could say that if Kant's message was dare to know, the anarchists took it a step further and asked, yeah, and why should anyone have the authority to tell us what to do in the first place? Their whole philosophy is based on rejecting all these hierarchies, whether it's the government, a big company, whatever, because they see them as fundamentally unfair and controlling.
Now, it's really important to get this right. Anarchism isn't just about chaos and tearing everything down. It's actually about what you build to replace it. It's built on some really strong principles, like individual autonomy, equality, and mutual aid. The whole idea is to create a society where people cooperate voluntarily, without anyone being in charge. And the same anti-authority spirit, well, it didn't just stay in the world of politics. It found its way right into the classroom. There was this radical movement called anti-pedagogy, and it asked a pretty shocking question. Is school actually a tool for freedom, or is it just another way to control people?
I mean, think about that famous line from Pink Floyd, "Teachers, leave them kids alone." That's basically the anthem for this idea. Anti-pedagogues argued that the whole traditional setup, teacher at the front, students listening, is just another form of oppression. Their belief was, look, kids are naturally curious. Let's just get out of their way and let them learn.
So you see, this whole debate over authority, it's not really just about politics or schools. When you peel back the layers, what you find at the core is a battle for knowledge itself. Because let's face it, the ultimate power isn't a king's crown or a judge's gavel. It's the power to control what people know and believe. Umberto Eco's amazing novel, The Name of the Rose, is probably the perfect story to illustrate this. It's set in this isolated monastery way back in the 14th century, and it shows you exactly how power works when you maintain it by controlling who gets access to information. In the story, the monastery's library isn't there to share knowledge at all. We think of libraries as open places, right? But in this book, the library is basically a fortress. Its job is to store and protect books, to hoard information and keep it away from people, not to spread it around. And that's how it works. By locking that knowledge away, the church authorities in the novel get to control how people think and even what they're allowed to question. They basically shut down that whole courage to know that Kant talked about before it even has a chance to start.
But of course, a push for total radical freedom like this was bound to create a backlash. And it did. A powerful counter-movement popped up. And their argument was basically, hold on a second. Some rules in some traditions aren't just good, they're absolutely necessary.
And they asked a really compelling question. What happens when the rejection of authority just goes too far? I mean, if everyone just does their own thing with no shared values, no common ground, does society just fall apart? Do we need rules to function? You can see this clash perfectly in education. As a direct response to anti-pedagogy, a new movement came along called the courage to educate. And it was a total flip. Where anti-pedagogy saw radical freedom, this movement saw chaos. One side championed spontaneous creativity, while the other side stressed the need for discipline, tradition, and the teacher as a guide. See, for this new movement, freedom wasn't just the absence of rules. In fact, they argued that real freedom can only exist when you have a structured society. They believe that things like duty, discipline, and tradition, well, those are the guardrails that keep us from sliding into chaos and actually give our lives a sense of meaning. Okay, so we've got these two big opposing ideas, right? On one side, you have radical autonomy, and on the other, structured authority. So the big question is there a middle ground? Is there a third way that can somehow value both freedom and order?
Well, the economist and philosopher F.A. Hayek thought so. He offered up a kind of third path. He basically argued that we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking it's an either-or choice, either total top-down authority or complete individual freedom. He was convinced there was another way for society to organize itself.
Hayek's big idea is something called spontaneous order. It's fascinating. He argued that the best, most functional societies, they aren't designed by some genius at the top imposing a master plan, and they're also not the result of everyone just doing whatever they feel like. Instead, he said that order just emerges. It evolves over time, organically, from the trial and error of millions of people all making their own decisions, generation after generation. So whether we're talking about an evolving order or a radical break, this debate is obviously far from over. It's still happening right now. Today, a lot of modern thinkers, especially from what's known as the Frankfurt School, use the word emancipation to talk about this. It's this idea of an ongoing, continuous struggle for freedom from all kinds of oppression, social, political, you name it. Really, anytime you see people out protesting or questioning traditions that have been around forever, or just challenging the way things are, you're literally watching another chapter of this story unfold. It's this timeless human drama, always pushing against the things that hold us back, always searching for a little more freedom. And that brings us right back to the beginning and back to you. Because this isn't just some abstract philosophical debate, is it? We all live this tension every single day. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. In your own life, what authority do you accept? And where, right now, are you daring to know for yourself?